My husband betrayed me with our neighbor, and I thought my world was over. But walking away from both of them was the only way I finally found myself. The first time I saw the house, I fell in love with it. It wasn't big or grand, not the sort of property that made people turn their heads in awe. But it had a quiet charm. A white painted porch, ivy climbing the sides, and a small garden that looked as though it had been carefully tended for decades. After years of living in cramped apartments, this house felt like a dream. "It's perfect," I whispered, my hand still on the wrought iron gate as I stared at the front yard. My husband, Alex, glanced at me and smiled, though there was a tiredness behind his eyes. "Yeah, it's nice. Finally some space, right?" We moved in that August, the last of the summer heat clinging to the air. The neighborhood seemed peaceful. Tree-lined streets, children playing in yards, the occasional jogger passing by. It was the kind of place where people waved to each other, where the air carried the smell of fresh-cut grass and barbecues. I wanted to believe we'd found our forever home. On our first evening, as we unpacked boxes and argued gently over where to put the sofa, a knock at the door. I opened it to find a man standing there, holding a bottle of wine. He was tall, mid-30s, with sharp features softened by an easy smile. His dark hair was just slightly tousled, like he hadn't tried too hard, and his blue eyes seemed to catch the fading sunlight. "Hi," he said warmly. "I'm Ethan. I live next door. Figured I'd come over and welcome you to the neighborhood." The friendliness in his tone was disarming. I invited him in, and soon the three of us were sitting amid stacks of cardboard boxes, sipping wine out of mismatched mugs because I hadn't yet found the glasses. Ethan was charming in a way that put you at ease. He asked about our move, what had brought us to town, and shared stories about the neighborhood. He worked in architecture, he said, and had lived in his house for about 5 years. "It's a quiet street," he told us, leaning back against a stack of boxes. "People keep to themselves mostly, but if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to knock. My door's always open." That night, after he left, I joked to Alex, "Well, at least we have a nice neighbor." Alex smirked, but didn't reply. He'd been distracted all evening, fiddling with his phone under the table. I chalked it up to work stress. He had just started a new job, and the hours had been brutal. In the weeks that followed, Ethan became a familiar presence. He waved when I walked to the mailbox, stopped by with extra vegetables from his garden, even helped Alex carry in a new bookshelf when I wasn't home. He was thoughtful, without being intrusive, and soon it felt natural to see him around. One Saturday, Alex suggested inviting Ethan over for dinner. "He's been really helpful," Alex said. "Feels rude not to." I agreed, though a small voice inside me wondered if Alex was more eager than necessary. Still, I pushed the thought aside. We needed friends here, and Ethan seemed like the perfect candidate. Dinner was lively. Ethan told stories that had us both laughing, his charisma filling the room. At one point, I caught Alex watching him intently, almost admiringly, and something in my stomach tightened. I brushed it off. Maybe Alex was just glad to have someone to talk to other than me after weeks of long hours and stress. But over time, little things began to bother me. Like the way Alex always seemed to know when Ethan would be home, or how he lit up when Ethan joined us, more animated than he had been in months, or how they'd sometimes fall into private jokes, leaving me smiling politely on the sidelines. One evening, I came home to find them sitting on the porch together, beers in hand, laughing at something I hadn't heard. They didn't notice me at first, and when they did, Alex's laughter faded too quickly, replaced with a strained smile. I ignored it, but unease gnawed at me. Then came the night I couldn't sleep. I got up for water around midnight and noticed light spilling faintly through the curtains. Curious, I peeked outside. There was Alex, standing in the yard, talking to Ethan over the fence. Their voices were low, too low for me to catch the words, but their faces were serious. The conversation ended abruptly when Ethan noticed me at the window. He gave a small wave before disappearing into his house. Alex came in moments later, startled to find me awake. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, too casually. "I was thirsty," I said slowly. "What were you two talking about?" He hesitated. Just for a second, but enough. "Nothing, just neighbor stuff." Something inside me shifted then, a seed of suspicion taking root. In the days that followed, I started paying closer attention. I noticed how Alex's phone buzzed more often and how he sometimes stepped outside to take calls. I noticed how Ethan seemed to appear at just the right moments, as though he and Alex shared some unspoken rhythm. One afternoon, as I was watering the plants in the kitchen, I glanced out the window and saw them again. Alex leaning over the fence, Ethan standing close, their heads bent together. They looked up at the same time, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw guilt flicker across Alex's face. That night, lying in bed, I tried to reason with myself. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe Alex just enjoyed Ethan's company. But deep down, a whisper kept rising. Something isn't right. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I had left work early and pulled into the driveway just as Ethan's car door slammed shut. He walked quickly back toward his house, not noticing me. Inside, Alex was in the kitchen, his face flushed. He startled when I came in, dropping his phone onto the counter. "You're home early," he said, too brightly. "Yeah, I eyed the phone. Everything okay?" "Of course, why wouldn't it be?" His smile was forced, his eyes darting toward the window where Ethan's house loomed. I didn't push then, but that night, as Alex slept, I reached for his phone. My hand shook as I scrolled, half hoping I wouldn't find anything. At first, it was just normal texts. Work updates, grocery lists. But then, hidden in a thread without a name, I found them. Messages. Dozens of them. They weren't explicit, not exactly, but they carried a tone I couldn't ignore. "Can't wait to see you again. Don't tell her yet. Last night was amazing." My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might wake Alex. My chest tightened, breath shallow as realization crashed over me. It wasn't another woman. It was Ethan. And suddenly, the perfect little house, the charming neighborhood, the friendly neighbor, all of it twisted into something I barely recognized. I set the phone down carefully, my hands trembling. I stared at Alex's sleeping face, trying to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the secrets he was hiding. Sleep never came that night. By morning, I knew nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. The morning after I found the messages, the world looked the same, but felt entirely different. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, birds chirped outside, and Alex brewed coffee like always. But to me, every small act seemed tainted by the truth I now carried inside. He hummed softly as he poured 2 mugs, sliding one toward me. "Big day at work?" he asked, casual, unaware that I had read the words that betrayed him. I forced a smile, my throat dry. "Yeah, busy." Inside, my thoughts screamed. How can you stand there and pretend nothing's wrong? How can you lie so easily? I wanted to confront him right then, to shove the phone in his face and demand answers. But fear held me back. Fear of what he might say. Fear of confirming that the man I married was someone I didn't really know. Instead, I sipped my coffee, its bitterness coating my tongue. That evening, when Alex claimed he had to stay late at work, I didn't argue. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway, then slipped outside. The air was cool, the sky streaked with fading pink. I walked to Ethan's house, heart hammering, and knocked on the door. It opened slowly, and there he was. Ethan looked surprised, but only for a moment. Then he smiled. "Hey, Emma, everything okay?" I studied him, searching for cracks in the easy charm. "Can we talk?" He stepped aside, gesturing me in. His home was warm, tastefully decorated, and smelled faintly of cedarwood. I sat on the edge of the sofa, every muscle tense. "I know," I said finally, my voice shaking. "Know what?" "Don't play dumb, Ethan. I saw the messages, between you and Alex." For the first time since I'd met him, Ethan looked genuinely rattled. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. "So, it's true," I whispered. He turned back to me, eyes heavy with something that looked like guilt, or maybe regret. "Emma, I'm sorry. You weren't supposed to find out like this." Anger flared in my chest. "Not supposed to find out? You're sleeping with my husband!" "Please, keep your voice down," he urged, glancing toward the window. "It's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think." Ethan sank into the armchair across from me, his expression pained. "Yes, Alex and we've been involved, but it wasn't some cheap affair. It's complicated. Complicated? My hands trembled in my lap. You've been sneaking around behind my back with him. What could possibly make that complicated? He hesitated, then leaned forward, his voice low. Because Alex didn't want this. Not at first. He's been struggling for a long time, Emma, struggling with who he is, what he wants. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did. And now he trailed off, sighing heavily. My head spun. I wanted to scream, to run, to deny everything. Instead, I sat frozen, his words echoing inside me. He loves you, he continued. That much I know. But he's torn. I didn't mean to get in the middle of it, but stop, I cut in, my voice sharp. You betrayed me, both of you.
His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He simply nodded, as if accepting my rage. I stood abruptly, my body trembling with adrenaline. I don't want to hear another word. This conversation never happened. Before he could respond, I stormed out of his house, slamming the door behind me. Back in my kitchen, I collapsed into a chair, burying my face in my hands. The image of them together burned in my mind. Every laugh they'd shared, every late-night conversation, every excuse Alex had given, it all clicked into place. When Alex returned later, that night I was still at the table. He looked exhausted, his tie loose around his neck. "Hey," he said softly, "you're up late." I stared at him, my chest tight. "We need to talk." His eyes flickered with something. Fear, maybe. He sat across from me, waiting. "I know about you and Ethan," I said bluntly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Alex's face drained of color, his mouth opening but no words coming out. Finally, he whispered, "How?" "I saw the messages," I said coldly. He closed his eyes, his shoulders sagging. "Emma, I never wanted you to find out like this. Don't you dare," I snapped. "Don't you dare tell me how I should have found out. You lied to me. You betrayed me." Tears filled his eyes, but I refused to soften. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Then why did it? Why Ethan? Why now?" He rubbed his face, his voice breaking. "Because I've been living a lie, Emma, for years. I tried to bury it, to be the husband you needed, but I couldn't fight it forever. Ethan, he made me realize things I've been too afraid to admit." His words cut deeper than any knife. "So what am I to you? A mistake? A shield? What?" "No," he said firmly, leaning forward. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you, Emma. That hasn't changed. But part of me loves him too." I stared at him, my world shattering piece by piece. "Do you even hear yourself? You can't have us both." "I know," he whispered, tears streaming down his cheeks. "And that's what's killing me." I stood, my legs unsteady. "You made your choice when you crawled into his bed. Don't expect me to pick up the pieces." I walked out of the room, leaving him sobbing at the table. In the dark silence of our bedroom, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The man beside me was both my husband and a stranger. And for the first time since we'd moved into this house, I wondered if I truly wanted to stay.
The days that followed were a blur of silence and tension. Alex tried to speak to me, but I couldn't bring myself to listen. Every time I looked at him, I saw Ethan's face, their shared glances, the betrayal written in invisible ink across our lives. I started leaving the house earlier for work, coming home later than usual. I spent hours wandering the grocery store aisles or sitting in my car just to avoid stepping into the house where every corner whispered lies. Alex noticed, of course. "Emma, please," he said one night as I grabbed my purse after dinner. "Can we just talk? You can yell, scream, throw things at me if you want, but please, don't shut me out." I froze in the doorway, my back to him. I don't have the energy to scream anymore. His voice cracked. "Then let me explain. Let me tell you everything." But I left anyway, the sound of the door slamming my only reply. At work, I became a ghost. My coworkers noticed my distraction, but I brushed off their concern. How could I explain? How could I tell anyone that my husband was in love with our neighbor? One evening, I parked outside the house, staring at the porch light glowing softly. Ethan was out there, watering his plants, as if nothing had changed. He glanced up and saw me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I considered confronting him again, screaming at him to move, to leave us alone. Instead, I drove off, tears blurring the road ahead. That night, Alex waited for me in the living room. His eyes were red, as though he hadn't slept. "Emma," he said gently, "I can't keep pretending we're okay. Please, just sit with me." Reluctantly, I sat across from him, my arms crossed. "I know I destroyed us," he began, his voice trembling. "But I need you to understand. I never meant to hurt you. For so long, I didn't even understand myself. And when Ethan came along, he saw me, really saw me, in a way I didn't even know was possible." I bit my lip, my anger clashing with a bitter ache in my chest. "So what was I, Alex? Just a role you played? A lie you told yourself?" He shook his head frantically. "No, you're not a lie. I loved you then, I love you now. But there's another part of me I kept buried. And when it surfaced, I didn't know how to stop it." His honesty stung worse than the lies. "You could have told me," I whispered. "You could have trusted me with the truth." "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared you'd leave, scared of what it meant. And now, I've lost you anyway." I wanted to scream, to tell him he was right, that he'd lost me forever. But instead, my voice softened, surprising even me. "What do you want from me, Alex?" He met my gaze, his eyes wet with desperation. "I don't know. Forgiveness? A chance to make things right? I know I can't erase what I did, but I can try to be better. For you." The sincerity in his words twisted something inside me. I hated him for what he'd done, but a part of me still loved him, and that part clung stubbornly to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could survive this. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood and walked to the bedroom, leaving him behind. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Emma, I'm staying at a hotel for a few nights. I think we both need space. But please, don't mistake this for giving up. I'm not. I'll fight for you, no matter what it takes. Alex." I stared at the note until the words blurred.
That evening, a knock on the door startled me. When I opened it, Ethan stood there, holding a paper bag. "I made too much dinner," he said awkwardly. "Thought you might want some?" I should have slammed the door in his face. Instead, I let him in, too drained to argue. We sat at the table, the silence heavy between us. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Emma. I swear to you." I glared at him. "You knew he was married." "I know," he admitted, shame in his eyes. "And I hate myself for it. But feelings aren't always neat and clean. Sometimes they're messy, ugly, and sometimes they hurt people." His words struck a chord I didn't want to acknowledge. I was furious with him, but beneath the anger was a dangerous curiosity. What did Alex see in him? What made Ethan so irresistible that my husband risked everything? "You should stay away from me. From both of us." He nodded. "I will, if that's what you want." But even as he said it, I could feel the pull between us, a tension that made my skin prickle. I hated it. I hated him. And yet... That night, alone in bed, I replayed the conversation. I hated myself for wondering what would have happened if I hadn't told him to leave. Days passed. Alex texted, called, begged me to meet him, but I ignored most of his attempts. My anger was still raw, but so was my confusion. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I wasn't ready to let go either. Then came the evening that changed everything. I was coming home late when I saw Alex's car parked in Ethan's driveway. My chest tightened as I pulled over, my pulse thundering in my ears. Through the window, I saw them. Alex and Ethan, standing close, their voices muffled but intense. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The way Alex's hand brushed Ethan's arm, the way Ethan leaned in, it was all there. My stomach twisted. Rage, grief, betrayal, they all collided at once. I stumbled back into my car and drove off, my vision blurred by tears. When Alex came home later that evening, I was waiting. "Were you with him?" I demanded. He froze, his face pale. "Emma, don't lie to me. I saw you." He dropped his gaze, guilt radiating from him. "Yes, I was. But it wasn't what you think." "Of course it wasn't. It never is it?" "Please," he begged, stepping closer. I was telling him it's over, that I'm choosing you. The words pierced me, but I couldn't tell if they healed or wounded. "You think that makes it better?" I asked quietly. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. That night, alone in bed, I replayed the conversation. I'm choosing you. But if he had to choose, if there was ever a question, had I already lost?
Sleep had abandoned me long before dawn. I tossed and turned, haunted by Alex's words. "I'm choosing you." They echoed in my head like a cruel refrain. If he had to choose, if there was even a flicker of doubt, wasn't that proof enough that I was never enough for him? By morning, the silence in the house was unbearable. Alex was in the kitchen, making coffee like it was any other day, but his shoulders were hunched, his movements hesitant. "Good morning," he said softly, as if afraid to wake a sleeping animal. I grabbed a mug, avoiding his eyes. "Don't pretend everything's normal." He exhaled slowly. "I'm not pretending. I just don't know how to act around you anymore. I feel like no matter what I do, I'll make it worse." "You already made it worse," I snapped, setting the mug down with more force than I intended. "You think a few promises can erase what you did? That one sentence, 'I'm choosing you,' fixes everything?" His voice trembled. "It doesn't fix anything, I know that, but it's the truth. I want us. I want you." I turned to him, finally meeting his gaze. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with desperation, but beneath it was something else. Fear. Not of losing Ethan, of losing me. And I didn't know if that made me feel stronger or crueler. The days that followed were thick with tension. Alex tried in his own way. He sent flowers to my office. He left handwritten notes on my pillow. He cooked my favorite meals, though I barely touched them. Every gesture was a reminder of his guilt and of my inability to let go. One evening, I went for a walk just to clear my head. The air was cool, crisp, the sun bleeding into the horizon. I wandered farther than usual, past streets I barely recognized, until I realized I wasn't walking aimlessly. I was avoiding the possibility of running into Ethan. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As I rounded the corner back toward our block, I saw him sitting on his porch, a book in his hands. He looked up and froze when our eyes met. "Emma," he said softly, setting the book aside. I clenched my fists, ready to keep walking, but something inside me stopped. Maybe it was the exhaustion or the ache of unanswered questions, but I found myself stepping closer. "What do you want from me?" I asked sharply. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Not anymore." "Then why were you with him the other night?" Pain flickered across his face. "Because he came to end it, to tell me he was choosing you, and I needed to hear it, even if it broke me." His honesty disarmed me. For the first time, I saw not just the man who had stolen my husband's heart, but a man who was hurting too. "You destroyed my life," I whispered, my voice shaking. His eyes glistened. "I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of mine." The raw sincerity in his words unsettled me. It would have been easier to hate him if he'd been smug, unapologetic. But this made my anger waver in dangerous ways. I turned and walked away without another word, but my heart was pounding, my mind spinning with contradictions. When I got home, Alex was waiting by the window, his relief palpable when he saw me. "I was worried," he said. "I went for a walk," I muttered. His gaze searched mine as if he could read the encounter written on my face. "Did you see him?" I hesitated too long. The silence was enough of an answer.
Alex's jaw tightened. "Emma, I told you, it's over. I want nothing to do with him anymore." "Then why does it feel like he's still here, between us?" I demanded. He flinched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "Because you won't let it go. You keep holding on to him, even if it's through your anger." His words hit harder than I expected. Was he right? Was I the one keeping Ethan alive in our marriage, even as I cursed his name? I stormed off before I could answer, slamming the bedroom door. That night, lying awake, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just angry at Alex. I was angry at myself. Angry for still loving him. Angry for being unable to sever the bond, no matter how deep the betrayal cut. The next day, Alex suggested counseling. "We need help, Emma. I can't fix this alone, and neither can you. Please, let's try." I wanted to say no, to tell him it was pointless. But the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. So I agreed. The counselor's office was warm, filled with soft light and muted colors. A woman named Dr. Harris greeted us with a calm smile, as if she had seen couples like us countless times before. For the first session, she asked us to share why we came. Alex spoke first, his voice thick with emotion. "Because I betrayed her, and I don't know how to earn her trust back, but I want to try. I'll do anything to try." When it was my turn, I hesitated, then said, "Because I don't know if I can forgive him, and I don't know if I want to." Dr. Harris nodded thoughtfully. "Then that's where we start. Not with forgiveness, not with promises, but with honesty. Both of you." The sessions were exhausting. Alex poured out his guilt, his confusion about his identity, his fear of losing me. I shared my rage, my heartbreak, my inability to believe him. It wasn't progress, not yet, but it was something. Weeks passed. Slowly, the raw edges dulled, though the wounds remained. Alex was patient, steady, almost desperate in his devotion. And yet, despite everything, Ethan lingered in the back of my mind. His words, his regret, his sincerity, they haunted me, a ghost I couldn't exorcise. One evening, after a particularly draining session, I found myself standing at my window, staring at his porch. It was empty, but the light was on inside. Alex came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. For the first time in months, I didn't pull away. "I love you," he whispered into my hair. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his embrace wash over me. But even as I leaned into him, a single, unshakable thought pulsed in the back of my mind. Was love enough to erase betrayal, or was it just a bandage over a wound that would never heal? The weeks blurred together, stitched by fragile threads of routine and therapy sessions. Alex tried with all his might to prove his devotion, but I could feel the strain beneath his smiles. Every word he spoke carried a weight, every gesture trembled with desperation. And still, Ethan's presence lingered, like a shadow I couldn't shake. It was a Sunday morning when everything unraveled again. The day was bright, deceptively cheerful, the kind of day that mocked the darkness festering inside me. I was watering the plants in the front yard when I saw Ethan step outside. His hair was messy, his face pale, as if he hadn't slept. Our eyes met for the briefest second before he looked away. I should have turned, walked back inside, but something in his expression, a quiet torment, froze me in place. "Morning," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I clenched the watering can. "Don't." He flinched. "I wasn't going to. He stopped himself, shaking his head. "Never mind." I stared at him, my chest aching with a mess of emotions I couldn't name. "Why are you still here?" I asked finally. "Why haven't you left?" His eyes lifted to mine, raw and unguarded. "Because this was supposed to be my fresh start, and now it's just ruins." The honesty in his words twisted something inside me. I hated him, and yet a part of me pitied him too. Before I could respond, Alex's voice called from behind me. "Emma, you coming in?" I stiffened. Ethan's face darkened, and without another word, he retreated inside his house. I turned to Alex, who was watching me carefully, suspicion etched in his eyes. "Just finishing up," I said quickly. He didn't press, but the silence between us that day was suffocating. That night, in bed, I felt his arm wrap around me tighter than usual, as if he was holding on for dear life. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how long we could keep pretending we were healing when the wound was still bleeding. Therapy sessions grew heavier. Dr. Harris asked hard questions. Emma, when you imagine your future with Alex, what do you see? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My mind was blank, a void where dreams should have been. And you, Alex, what do you fear most? Losing her, he said without hesitation. His voice cracked. I can live with my guilt. I can live with the mistakes I've made. But I can't live without Emma. Tears stung my eyes, but I turned away, unwilling to let him see how much his words still reached me.
And then, as if drawn by some invisible thread, he stepped out onto his porch. His eyes widened when he saw me. Emma, he said softly. I should have gone back inside, but I didn't. We stood there, separated by a stretch of lawn, yet bound by everything unsaid. Finally, I whispered, why did it have to be him? Why my husband? Ethan's face contorted with anguish. Because I didn't plan it. I didn't mean for it to happen. He was broken in ways I understood. And he broke off, his hands shaking. I fell in love with him. I wish I hadn't, but I did. The words pierced me, but what hurt more was the sincerity behind them. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't trying to justify himself. He was just confessing. Tears burned my eyes and I turned away, my chest heaving. I couldn't listen to any more. When I returned inside, Alex stirred in bed, his eyes half open. Where were you? He mumbled. Just needed air, I lied, slipping under the covers. But as I lay there, my heart raced with a truth I couldn't admit. Not to him, not to myself. That part of me, despite everything, was drawn to Ethan's pain, his regret, his brokenness, mirroring my own. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was in the kitchen when I heard raised voices outside. Rushing to the window, I saw Alex and Ethan standing on the sidewalk, tension crackling like electricity. What the hell are you still doing here? Alex shouted, his face red with fury. This isn't just your neighborhood. Ethan shot back. I have just as much right to be here as you do. Alex stepped closer, fists clenched. Stay away from her. Ethan's jaw tightened. I haven't touched her. I haven't even spoken to her. But can you say the same, Alex? Can you promise you've never thought about me since? The words detonated like a bomb. Alex lunged, grabbing Ethan by the collar. I rushed outside, screaming for them to stop. Enough, I cried, forcing myself between them. Do you hear yourselves? You're tearing everything apart. They froze, both breathing hard, their eyes locked in a battle I couldn't untangle. Go inside, Alex ordered me, his voice low and dangerous. No, I said firmly, not until you both stop this madness. Ethan's chest heaved. I'll go, he muttered finally, stepping back. I'm not here to fight. He turned away, leaving Alex trembling with rage. Back inside, Alex collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I can't do this anymore, Emma. I can't keep fighting him. I can't keep fighting you. His words cut deep. I never asked you to fight. Yes, you did, he said bitterly, lifting his eyes to mine. Every time you look at him, every time you can't let him go, you're asking me to fight for you. And I don't know if I can win. The silence that followed was deafening. That night, I lay in dead beside him, but the distance between us felt insurmountable. And in the darkness, one thought haunted me more than any other. Maybe this wasn't about choosing between Alex and Ethan. Maybe it was about choosing myself.
The night after Alex's outburst, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my mind. I don't know if I can win. Maybe this had never been a battle he could win. Maybe it wasn't about Ethan at all. It was about me. For weeks, I had been drowning in betrayal, in anger, in grief. But beneath it all was something I hadn't admitted, not even to myself. I had lost sight of who I was outside of Alex, outside of our marriage, outside of this entire tangled mess. The next morning, I woke early and sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, staring at the quiet street. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. For the first time in months, the world felt still. When Alex joined me, his hair tousled, his eyes tired, he didn't speak right away. He just sat beside me, his hands clasped tightly, as if holding himself together. Finally, he said, "I'm scared, Emma. Every day I wake up afraid you'll decide I'm not worth it anymore. And maybe I'm not, but I don't know how to live without you." His honesty should have softened me, but instead, it pierced me with clarity. I loved him, I knew that, but love wasn't the same as trust. Love wasn't enough to erase what had been done. "Alex," I said quietly, "we've both been pretending that if we just try hard enough, this will go back to what it was. But it won't. It can't." His eyes widened, panic flashing across them. "So what are you saying? That you're leaving me?" Tears blurred my vision. "I'm saying I need to find myself again. Away from you. Away from him. Away from all of this." He shook his head violently. No, Emma, we can fix this. We can." I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "We've been trying to fix something that's already broken. And maybe it's okay to let it go." The silence between us was heavy, filled with everything we weren't saying. Finally, he whispered, "I don't know how to let you go." I swallowed hard. "Then let me show you." I packed my bags that afternoon. Not much, just clothes, a few books, the bare essentials. Each item I placed into the suitcase felt like a small act of liberation, even as my heart ached. Alex stood in the doorway, watching me, his face pale and hollow. He didn't beg. He didn't try to stop me. He just stood there, silent, as if the weight of his choices had finally crushed him. When I wheeled the suitcase to the car, I saw Ethan standing on his porch. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of sorrow and resignation. I paused, meeting his gaze one last time. "This isn't about you," I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "It never really was. It's about me." He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Emma." I gave him a faint smile, then turned away. As I drove off, leaving both men behind, the weight on my chest began to lift. The pain was still there, sharp and raw, but beneath it was something new. Freedom.
The weeks that followed were strange and quiet. I rented a small apartment on the edge of town, a modest place with peeling paint and a view of the river. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I was alone with myself. I filled the days with long walks, with journaling, with therapy sessions of my own. I learned to cook meals just for me, to wake without dread, to sit in silence without fear. Sometimes I cried for what I had lost, for the marriage I once believed unshakable, for the man I had loved so deeply. Other times, I cried for the woman I had become, the one who had ignored the cracks until the whole foundation collapsed. But slowly, piece by piece, I began to rebuild. Months later, I ran into Alex at the grocery store. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes still carried the same tenderness when they met mine. "Emma," he said softly, almost reverently. "Alex." We stood there, awkwardly, the hum of the store around us. Finally, he said, "You look good, happier." "I am," I admitted. He smiled faintly, though his eyes were sad. "I'm glad. You deserve that." There was no anger in his voice, no bitterness, just acceptance. For the first time, I realized he was healing too, in his own way. We didn't linger. We didn't rehash the past. We just exchanged a quiet goodbye and went our separate ways. And it was enough. One evening, sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, I thought about everything that had happened. About Alex, about Ethan, about the storm that had torn through my life and left me standing in the wreckage. I didn't know if I would ever fall in love again. I didn't know if I even wanted to. But I knew this. I had survived. And in that survival, I had found something stronger than love. I had found myself.